way stronger than he was. He was fast, very fast. We have in German, we have a nice support for that. I didn't know English. He wasn't slow.
Very agile.
What's that?
Very agile.
Possible.
And he was your first teacher, was he? He was a teacher on the.
He was a private teacher. His name was Rudolf Pide. He was at the best of the Japanese War, 1905, between Japan and Russia.
And he had fought in that war?
My father, no.
No, but the.
His father was a lieutenant. Another man like that.
I see. And this Rudolf had fought in the war. He had fought. And he was your teacher?
Yes, in Russian language and German language. And because he took part in the war, so he teaches us boys how to attack, how to use the bayonet. As soon as my father understood, he stopped him. And my father was a teacher too, but not for his own family. He used to be teacher in the village where he grew up. But he liked more farming, so he quit teaching.
There were 7 teachers in the family.
Eight, yeah.
8?
There's the brothers in town, there's the brothers. But there's the children in the family.
So it's a very smart family, eh?
Here they are.
That's my family.
All right.
So do you have any memories from the classroom when this Rudolf was teaching you? Other than bayonet practice?
Was he a good teacher?
Oh yes.
How many years did you go with him?
I don't know, 4 or 5.
And you were working on the farm during this time?
Oh yes, I was working. I always had a responsible job, caring for the cows or for a chicken or something else, or for the sheep.
He was a shepherd.
Right.
Or for pigs, we had 90 pigs. Little ones.
Do you remember as you were growing up whether pacifism and the way of peace was taught at you as a child?
Was ist das?
Ja, als Kinder, was wurde gelehrt?
Das Schreiben und Rechnen. Lesen.
Bible stories. Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, the Mennonites, he said, that his father hadn't fought in the war, and whether the pacifism was still taught when he was a child.
His teacher.
So is that why your father stopped the bayonets?
That's yes, effect.
Most of these, it was Mennonite settlements, and they all were the same.
That was on a farm.
Oh, yes,
and the place there were the four farms, and those 4 families we had about the children.
So did you meet in a home then?
No, we had a private school. I guess my dad has put it.
How many students would have been there? Very many?
About 13 or 14. And all 5 classes in one room, like the small schools are.
And did you go then to other places to school?
Oh yes. Yeah, I was in high school 1 year.
Gnadenfeld, yeah? Was it in Gnadenfeld?
Yes. And then it was private buses. But the private buses were all in Russian.
And then he took quite a few short Bible courses. You know, there was Mr. Taves. He would come around in the settlements and give about 6 or 7 weeks of Bible courses. Maybe I should.
No, that's good. Keep going.
Yeah.
So, were you studying for the ministry or anything? Did you have any?
No, just to get acquainted with the Bible.
And, yeah.
That was more important than to learn to fight,
Right.
to keep peace.
Was this Mr. Taves kind of like?
A minister.
He was a minister.
Oh, yes.
That was his full-time job?
Yeah, he was a high school teacher. And he was a minister.
And he was, you know, Grandpa is very good, was good acquainted with him. We have somewhere a big picture of him. And he was murdered or died up in Siberia for his faith. With Mr. Taves.
Yeah, he preached a clear gospel. That's the first time I hear the gospel. And I think that the first time I hear it, that I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ. And I am the first one who was baptized in our family, the youngest one.
Oh, you're part of you. That wasn't Mennonite Brethren then?
No.
It was conference.
His parents and the whole family was converted.
Yeah, all the family.
And all the Rempels, they were all these Rempels.
Because our
His father's
my grandfather was an elder in the conference church, so they felt somehow obliged to stay in the church.
Had the Mennonite Brethren split already occurred then? Were there Mennonite Brethren already?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that started in 1860. And that was in 25 and 24. In 22.
Was the church very active then that you remember? Was the church very active?
No, it was a very small. Actually, I was the leader of the Bible study and sometimes funerals.
Yeah, he conducted that shortly after he was baptized. His uncle, Tantinelli's father, died. You know Tantinelli, Lucy? Her father died, and he had to conduct the funeral.
And other funerals.
He was 19 years old.
But there was nobody, you see.
And from then on, he started to preach.
So you started preaching at 19, eh?
Yeah, but there was nobody. And there were people, they were not acquainted with the gospel. They were Lutherans, and they were anxious to listen.
And those are the people who were living around their estate, and some were workers for them. They were mostly Lutherans.
Were there many Mennonites in that area, or were you?
No.
No, you were. When I remember you saying your father came down, and
Yeah, he came out. He left him in a settlement because there was no land for young couples, and they wanted to farm too. So he went to the Caucuses between Black Sea and Caspian Sea. Originally, he was born in the north side of the Black Sea, and he left that area and moved. The Russians had acquired lots of land from Turkey. Right. And the army officer in those days didn't get wages. When they win the war, they get them a big parcel of land. And they didn't know what to do with that land. They had 1,000 shepherds and for cheap money, and they were anxious to sell it. So my father bought so much land that he didn't leave enough money to operate a farm.
And then they lived in a little hut.
Oh, I see. So he had lots of land, but he lived in a little hut, eh?
Then a dugout.
But then the crops came in. You know, we started to, and wheat was something new. We didn't have much.
When that came to the area, then on the Caucasus they had barley and millet and oats, but not wheat. They didn't know what wheat was. And he made some fellow 25 and the 16 first have about 60, 70 acres. And the first crop was a nice crop because it was virgin land. He got a nice crop, but he couldn't sell the wheat. He couldn't sell it.
Because they didn't know what to do with it.
So he wrote to the wheat agency where he came from. And it was Armenian, the wheat agent. And he bought all the wheat, but he couldn't pay. He was 300 miles away. And that's no good business.
No.
And then Papa went down to collect the money, and the agent had no money. But they had a nice piano, and he gave the piano.
For all the wheat he got, the first payment for the piano.
So we had a nice piano in the house.
But no money.
No money. No, what did you do then?
Oh, we had vegetables and we had wheat and we could grind the wheat.
Over here.
No, it's okay.
We could grind the wheat and we had all this nice stuff.
So you kept some wheat for yourselves then?
Now the next year we could sell it. It was open. And then when the neighbors, the Russians found out what wheat was, how good it was to eat and nourishing, so they could sell it easy. But the people don't know what it is, they want to buy it.
And then all the neighbors started to grow wheat, yeah?
And there was not far away a Lutheran village by the name of Michael family, Michael family. And he said, the old fellow, he said to my dad, "Oh, Mr. Rempel, when you had come years ago, we would be rich people now." And afterwards they got rich and their sons got all shot by the communists because they were rich. Terrible.
Do you remember as you were, did you just, in your village, did you just preach, or where did you preach when you started?
In the village.
Where these Michaels, the village where the Michaels lived?
No, that was the next village.
Yeah, but did you go there too to preach? Or did they come here?
No, they had a Lutheran pastor and they served on Sundays and they had baptism, the children were baptized, and when they had to. But in our village that was a very poor village. You see, many people went to Argentina, to United States in 1912, and that were 10 farms there.
After they left,
Yes,
they bought the farm.
they sold the land and they left. They didn't know how to farm. They were too much drunk, and they spoke too much. It was more important to them to have a drink instead of taking care of the cattle and sow the crop in time. And they were surprised his father got rich on the farm because he worked and used common sense.
And then he bought all those houses and farms. And then when his own children, like Aron Rempel, perhaps.
Yeah, when they chased us off from our big farm, we went in the village, and that's where I preached.
And
So you preached after you'd been chased off the farm?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Didn't you before?
No,
When were you chased off the farm? How old were you then?
I think it was 1918. And 2 years down, it was 15.
Yeah, and then some of Grandpa's oldest children, they were married already, and each one got a farm then. So it was like a whole village of the Rempels.
So we had to live someplace. So we were lucky we had that Barbados farm ahead of time, and they had to go someplace. And my dad lived in one place. We lived as a family in one place, and my older brothers and sisters lived in the same thing, in private farms.
Did you feel safe living there? Did you feel safe in the village?
Oh yes.
Yeah, they plundered those big estates and killed many people were, of those big.
But they didn't go into the villages so much?
No,
not so much.
no, not that time, but later on.
Later on?
Yeah.
But then they were just going after the big estates.
Yes, they killed us. so many people, from the big estates. And then Grandpa was arrested, yeah?
Yeah, that was in 1990. We had to flee from that village in 1990 till we fled to a Russian village. And
What was the name of the village that you were living in?
Neu Kana.
Neu Kana.
How would you spell that?
Neu Kana.
Neu Kana. What does
Is
it
it
mean?
2 words, yeah? Neu Kana.
Yes.
Kana means like Kana.
Like in John 2, Jesus and a wedding in the Kana. That's the same, yeah.
Yes, it's the same name. But this was Neu Kana.
Right. So that's the...
That was an old Kana, a big village, and that was a new village.
Was it more German or
Lutheran, yeah, German.
How did you get chased away from the village? What happened that you made?
Well, the rats came closer and closer, so we fled ahead of time.
The war was moving closer. The revolution was moving closer.
Yes, we fled ahead of time.
But how far away was it? Do you remember?
Well, I would say it was 50 miles.
50.
50, yeah.
So, and what were you hearing about the revolution? What made you afraid?
Well, they tried to kill all the people. The same as the good people now in Vietnam, in Cambodia.
especially the one who used to have
Who
some
had something.
rich people?
So the reports were coming back from the front that this was happening.
Yeah. Because some people, the Mennonites are all over the place. And then you hear, those are killed.
Yeah, they made us all even with the Russians. And we had nothing. So they made us even, since everybody had nothing. So this was a big achievement for the communists to make all even.
So in 1919, you fled the Neu Kana.
Yeah, we rented in the Russian village a house and moved in. And when the communists came, they arrested my father and put him in jail. And I was 16 years that time, 1990. And mother came to the town where my father was in jail and visited him every day. And I was the escort. I went every day along to visit my father and carry what you brought him to eat.
Because she had to provide the food for him.
Oh yes. She didn't have that didn't get to me. And there was another, I think a Muslim. Yeah, that was a Muslim. And the village there were many Muslims too, and we felt a bit more secure in a Muslim country, in the Muslim village and in the Russian or the German village.
Why did you feel more secure among the Muslims?
Well, they were more strict. They hang on to
Old traditions. And
yeah,
stuff.
they were not communists.
So you felt sure that there weren't communist spies or.
Yeah, those fellows that were Ossetine, they used to be in the bodyguard. Big fellows, nice, straight fellows.
Yeah. The Tsar had them as bodyguard.
Oh, Muslim. He had Muslims.
Very tall and strong.
Which village was this that you? Which village did you flee to from Neu Kana?
This Russian village, what was the name?
Do you remember?
Ugarin,
Ugarin?
well, it was just in Manitoba.
Manitoba?
Yeah.
How far away from Manitoba?
Well, maybe 40 miles or so.
It's Manitoba, that's it.
Manitoba, that's the provincial town, like Victoria, the provincial capital.
Was this south of where you lived?
No, that's north of the Caspian Sea, of the Black Sea.
So every day your mother was visiting your father in jail?
Yes.
And then, what did you do then after that?
And my dad had to sleep on the concrete floor, that's what the way he got deaf. And they had to go usually in the afternoon, about 5 or 6 prisoners was to go to the bank of the Terek River and they grave about 6 or 7 7 bodies. And at night, the jail guards came in and had a list and asked certain names and called them out and took them to the river and chopped them to pieces. They lined them up on the bank of the hole so they could drop in the hole where they could chop them to pieces.
They didn't shoot them, they chopped them.
Save ammunition.
So your father had to dig the graves on the river?
Yes.
What river was that?
Tarik.
The Tarik River.
T-E-R-E-K.
Yeah, how did he come out?
Yeah, and how long was he in there?
There, like half a year, something like that.
About 6 months he was in
Yes.
jail. And every day he had to go and dig graves and...
Not every day, but once in a while. Depends how they felt the station in the jail, how many they want to kill.
Was there any reasons given, or was just...
Just as was a man who had a big farm.
As if it was a crime to have a big farm. And they were eating out from it.
Yeah, my dad got sick and I got a permit to take him to the hospital.
After 6 months, he was going deaf and he also got sick then?
Yes, and he got sick, and I was a Muslim, he got sick too, so I took him along to the hospital too. And when my father was admitted to the hospital, there was a communist in the next bed where my father had to lay in the hospital, and he was anxious to know who was his neighbor now, the newcomer. And he told the doctor to give him a pill so he would sleep in it forever. Poison.
After he found out that he was...
Yes, that he came out of jail. But it took only 2 nights, I think, and that communist sleep stopped him forever. But that has nothing to do with that.
No. What was your dad sick from? The...
Typhoid. And then we took our dad home when he got out of the hospital, and I got sick, and my oldest brother Abraham got sick, and typhoid fever. Typhus, yeah. But
was there an epidemic in the village?
Yes, all over in Russia.
And then did they let him go home after he was a little better?
Well, I didn't ask anybody.
No. I mean, your dad. Could he go home after he was? Okay.
That's what you're saying.
By that time, the White Army came. The communists lost the war.
Oh, I see.
Locally. So I went to the jail, said the jail is empty, it's open. There's no one in jail. Let's go.
So after he got out, he did go back to the jail, and it was empty. So
yes. So
It was good.
So I said, let's go. And it's paid off. And that's the way he got out.
So that area was then controlled by the White Army?
Yes. And a few days later, the White Army came and asked my dad if he would supply the ropes to hang some communists. And my dad said, no, I didn't do it. I wouldn't do it. So they had to supply their own ropes.
So your dad still maintained his ideals,
Yes.
his Christian ideals?
Yes. I was last night in Russia and experienced it all. I was sick this morning. But he comforted me, and it was for me very hard to believe that I was so real it was. To
And
go that through again.
So very real, all the experiences.
So after your dad got out of jail, and what did the family do then?
Well, we moved back to the Lutheran village in our little house there, and it was okay.
And did you live, just in the village, not in your estate? No.
My oldest brother still lived in the state, because the communists didn't know how to run. They did it to them, and they didn't trust my father.
So did the Red Army control the Lutheran village?
No.
No?
Yes,
Yeah.
the White Army controlled it.
Oh, the White Army.
Yes, now
Yeah.
the
White Army had that now.
Yes. Then it was peace again.
This was what 1920?
1919.
1919.
We were 16.
Yes.
Then what? Then did you go to that to Gnadenfeld?
No, we never.
Or was it before?
That was before.
So
I was in 1915 in Amsterdam, in high school, 1 year. So I'm really educated.
So when you moved back to the Lutheran village, you stayed there for a few years. Then you
It
lived.
was in 19. My dad stayed till 26 until they moved to Canada, and I stayed till 25, and then was drafted in the Red Army.
And when you moved back, you became a Christian, were baptized, and started preaching. After you moved back to the.
No, I was baptized in 22. I got converted in 1922. Yeah, my dad didn't dare to go close to the estate.
Close to where?
To the estate, the big farm.
To the estate.
Yeah.
And in 27, I got back from the army, and we burned all the titles from my dad's land, so the communists couldn't find it in our possession. Otherwise, they said, you expect yet to get your land. We're going to give you land, 6 feet under the ground.
Hmm. What year did you burn them?
In 27. So destroyed the evidence that we had left.
Yeah, and then when he came back from the Red Army, or was it just for a furlough? Or did you
That
write?
was when I came, 27 was when I came back.
Yeah, but 26 you wrote to your father.
No,
He's
it was
supposed to leave.
when I was drafted in the Red Army, the first letter I wrote home, because they did brainwash me there in the army, and they told me what the program was for the future. So I wrote my dad back home, leave this country as fast as you can, because we have no future here, we can't live here anymore. And that was in 25, and in 26 that got a passport and he could leave Russia. And after he had left, they scratched their ears, the communists said, well, where is Mr. Rempel? Oh, he's gone to Canada. And too bad. He would like this for him.
You heard that they were looking for him after
Yes.
he left, eh?
And it took me 3 years after I left the army, was the discharge from the army, from 25 to 39. From 37 to 39, 3 years, 2 years.
You were 2 years in the army. 2 years drafted.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Not 3?
No, 2 years. And when I was in the army, they tried to make me to use the combat training, but I didn't accept it. I rejected it. And then they interrogated me many times. They said, Mr. Rempel, and I said,
Not Mr. Rempel.
no, they didn't use the what Mr. said.
The Varish, yeah?
Yes, but it is.
Comrade.
Comrade Rempel, you look to us like a smart fellow, and we're going to make a good officer from you if you would come combat training. But I rejected. Well, I said, you were hunting at home rabbits, and you use a shotgun. What's the difference? Shotgun. I said, I want to be honest. And I would take combat training because you put me to your check house, but you're all ammunitionist, and I wouldn't shoot in people. And then they shoot me, then have you lost a soldier, and you lost your ammunition. Well, I said sometimes when I found the horses got sick, and we didn't kill the horses, but you had to kill it. You didn't butcher it, you had to kill it. And I shot horses to kill them, to give them easy deaths. And God said, you use a shotgun, why can't you use a rifle?
And then when he came back, his parents were gone, and he went to live with his brother
George.
George.
And I lived with Aron together. I was like a son in the family. And I always was.
Did you know that your parents had left?
Oh yes.
You found out that they had gone
yes.
to Canada. How did you get drafted? Did the Red Army take over from the White Army then? Like where you lived, did they get pushed back?
Oh yes, there was up and down going all the time. It was.
In some villages, you didn't know in the morning who was.
In the morning you wake up, you don't know. Are the Reds or are the Whites? You never knew.
If you survived overnight, you never knew. You have to be very careful. And they usually ask you what party you belong on, what party. And the Russian, that was the saying, which one you want.
So while you lived in the Lutheran village, the war was going back and forth.
Yes.
Did they have pretty well control of everything when you finally got drafted? Did they control most of Russia?
Oh yes. They started to draft young soldiers when the communists got very established, when they felt that they felt that they're strong enough. And they figured that it was a big honor to serve in the Red Army. So they left everybody they could grab it.
But from 18 years on, yeah?
Well, I was 19, yeah.
Do you remember how you got drafted? Do you remember when they came and got you?
Well, I had to report to the municipal town. And there were many other young boys, Cossacks and Russians, and all kind of nationality, like what Russia has. Russia is a mixed town. And then we first for the commission doctor, and they declared us fit for army, and we had to go.
And what was the place where you were drafted? What was the name?
It was Mozdok.
Mozdok. That's the name.
That's where you had to go?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Were the soldiers coming through the village and
Yeah.
ordering you?
All the surrounding villages.
No, but they had to go themselves, I think.
Yeah, but how did you know that you were drafted? Did the soldier have to tell you, or was it just an order?
Well, we got the order from the municipal court.
Oh.
We were all registered in the municipal, and they.
Oh, I see. So you were registered already.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and they knew the years, those years had to go in.
So when you were checked out and declared fit by the doctor, did you have to go right away into the army, or could you go back home and get?
They load you in the train and ship you to the army camp where they load you.
Where did you go? Which army camp did you go to?
It was an army camp not too far away from our place.
How many soldiers were there? Were there many soldiers there?
There was one division that was the 6,600, 2,600, 600.
3,600.
2,600.
And so you arrived there the first day, and do you remember what it was like? What your feelings were like then when you were going?
No, that took longer. That took 2 days and a night.
2 days and a night.
The train there.
Were you afraid of going into the army? What were your feelings about going into the
I
army?
trusted the Lord that nothing could happen.
Were any of your friends along with you?
No,
Because you were all by yourself.
There was one Lutheran went along.
Or otherwise you didn't have any friends that were along? Or...
No. In the evening, when prayer time was to go tonight to sleep, I walked out the
What's it?
Kazan.
Kazan, you know, that's like
Community houses where the soldiers live.
Oh, barracks?
barracks.
Barracks, yeah.
That's
I walked out the basement, the big properties on the yard. That's where I prayed.
What was it?
Poplar trees?
Properties, yes.
Yeah.
So you, just before the curfew at night, you would go and pray before the lights out, before everyone had to go to sleep at
Oh,
night?
yes.
But there were how many people in one room?
I don't remember what it was. Every yard was a couch and somebody sleeping.
So it was very crowded?
So
Was it very crowded?
Not too crowded, but it was crowded there.
But you said afterwards you were sleeping on the floor, didn't you
That
say?
was in jail.
Oh, that was in jail. That was in jail. Because he was sleeping on the floor.
As long as I was in the army, they had a bed for me.
Did they give you a uniform then? And
Yes. But it was so dark, especially they were so dirty, and it was terrible to put it on the head. So dirty.
do you remember what the camp life was like? Do you remember what the camp was like? What did you have to do during the day? Did you get up very early in the morning?
All kind of exercise and lections, brainwashing. That was the main thing, brainwashing.
What would they tell you?
What was the program? What was the communist?
What did you?
Do you remember what they wanted? What did they tell you that they wanted to do?
Excuse me.
They want revolution and kill all the people. What for them was have a different brought up.
They kept telling you that over and over again?
Always the same.
Would there be a whole...
And you had to attend.
How long would these sessions be? Would they be...
I don't know. I didn't.
Well, you have a favorite story, don't you, about how one instructor tried to prove that there was no God?
Yes, that too.
And didn't someone challenge him? Remember you telling me a story about how...
Well, but it was quite just this.
Did you talk with the soldiers about it afterwards? Would they talk about...
Yes, I found out that almost every soldier had a believing mother or a believing sister-in-law or a brother-in-law. The gospel penetrated almost in every family. But that was from the top. It was terrible, the Communist Party.
Well, did the soldiers believe what their instructors were telling them?
No.
They didn't want to be there either.
No. They were forced to serve in the army.
And when did you first... I remember you telling me one story about how one instructor, how in one class where the instructor was trying to prove that there was no God, and he was saying, you can't see him, so he doesn't exist. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Why don't you tell me about that story again?
Yeah. One instructor tried to prove that there's no God, and he got a young man around, and he was standing on a table, so that everybody could see him. And then he said to the soldiers, "Can you see this house here in the neighborhood?" "Yes, I can see the house." "Can you see the tree in the neighborhood?" "Yes, there's a tree." "Yes, there's a tree. You can see it." "Can you see God?" "No, we can't see God. There's no God." but you can see the process is there. And then he said to a young fellow, he was listening, so he figured he got, I guess, that young fellow, he got it. And he called him, come here on the table and continue the lecture, that there is no God. So the young fellow jumped on the table and he said, all the soldiers, the young fellow said, his friends, can you see this instructor here on the table? Yes, this instructor, yes, this instructor. Can you see? And then he asked another question, can you see the tree in the neighborhood? Yes, there's a tree. And then the instructor figured he was asked, can you see God? But he asked, can you see the instructor's prayer? No. That's the point. That's the point. I couldn't do anything. Many of those boys got married older, and they got letters from home, from parents and from the wives that the communists had stripped the barn out, the granary out, and took all the grain and took the cattle along, the cows and horse and whatever. And of course they wouldn't be for communists because they suffered at home, they had nothing. They tried to make all evils even, so they had nothing. But everybody had nothing. Yeah, that's in the
when did you first have to take combat training? When did?
Well, they wanted to right away.
Right away they wanted to give it.
Still as we were in the quarantine.
In the where?
In the quarantine.
And
but I refused right away right in the beginning. There were some Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, and they didn't show color right away, and they had a tough time in the army. But I was lucky, because I showed color right away, that I was a Christian, and I wouldn't do it. And they didn't know what to do in the army, because I had combat training, and they didn't force me too much to go on the lectures, so they put me in the kitchen to peel potatoes.
So you got out of combat training, you got out of the lectures to go do kitchen working.
Kitchen working.
Was this before you went to jail?
Yes, and then one day peeling potatoes, and the soldiers came, sent by the officer, by my superior, to call me in his office. And when I came in the office, he told me, I have orders to put you in jail. We can't keep you any longer here. So I said to him, do what you like, as long as you don't get pinched from me. So he sent me to jail. And when I went to jail, they had boys, Tatars, from Muslims, from way up north. And they only a few days in the army too, so they convoyed me to the jail. And they got their rifles and walked behind me. I said, you boys better put the bayonet on